The name Edgar Wright has become synonymous with style, and this much has become apparent throughout the last few years in the industry alone. Wright is a true visionary filmmaker within the industry, and time again, he's brought his signature charm and charisma to film properties that otherwise seem like they would struggle to stay afloat without his Midas touch of sorts to guide and lift them up. Whether it's the fast-paced video game frenzy of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, or the antics of everyone's favorite Winchester pub attendees in the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, Wright's frequent collaborations and executions have led to a passionate array of fans who are there to champion his work as it releases to the masses. Yet, Wright's career hasn't been without its fair share of ups and downs. For every movie that he makes, like Hot Fuzz, which consistently ranks as one of the funniest movies ever made and a must-watch for all cinema fans in general, you also have the whole Ant-Man fiasco, in which Wright was attached to direct the script for Marvel but left the project due to creative differences. Or take, for example, Wright's previous film Last Night in Soho back in 2021, which was a surrealist psychological horror film that at least attempted a distinct style, but nevertheless faltered under the weight of its own ambition. As a huge fan of Wright's earlier works, it's been kind of difficult to see him stumble upon the blockade of progress that he's attempted over the last few years alone. He is an immensely talented filmmaker, and although I'll always find myself at the movie theater to support any upcoming project he completes, instead of having a sure vote of confidence in Wright's ability as a filmmaker, I am now cautiously optimistic with these projects. And that's exactly the mindset I brought into Edgar Wright's newest film, which hits theaters this weekend. This film is called The Running Man and is his first film since 2021's Last Night in Soho. Re-teaming with his co-screenwriting partner from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Michael Bacall, The Running Man is an adaptation of Stephen King's 1982 novel of the same name, which was published under King's then pseudonym Richard Bachman, and is actually the second attempt at bringing this story to the big screen after 1987's film as well. When this film was first announced, I, like many of other fans of Edgar Wright's work, was immensely excited. Having little to no context or awareness of the source material, which was a rarity especially when it comes to the works of Stephen King, I was nevertheless enthralled and hooked from the short plot synopsis provided for the film itself. I mean, how could you not be excited about a Glen Powell-led action flick in the same vein of a movie like The Hunger Games? The trailers and marketing over the last few months did such a great job at highlighting an intensity and energy that I was sure Wright would bring to this film in spades, as he sort of does with all of his films overall. So I booked an immediate ticket to the first public showtime I could find, settled into my seat, and prepared myself as the IMAX logo arrived on screen. 2 hours later, I walked away immensely disappointed. Look, if you've been following my review work here for a while, which if you haven't and this is your first time here, please consider subscribing, you'll no doubt know that I pride myself in honesty and authenticity. After all, I never want an audience member to feel like they wasted their time during a movie. And in such a crowded landscape of content all vying for our attention at once, I want to use this platform to showcase and spread awareness for films that actually deserve your time. And on that level, as someone who analyzes and appreciates the art of filmmaking for a living, I want to let you know that I will be starting off this review by saying, The Running Man is unfortunately not worth your time. Now, such a statement might come as a shock to a lot of you, considering, it's an Edgar Wright film. I mean, you might be saying to yourself, an Edgar Wright film that is not worth checking out immediately in a movie theater? What's the reason? Well, as it turns out, there are a lot of reasons and issues with this film in particular. So buckle up because this might be an involved process. In The Running Man, audiences are introduced to Ben, played by Glen Powell, a man living with his wife and daughter in a dystopian version of America. With his daughter sick and craving medicine that they don't have the financial means to provide her, Ben's interest is piqued by the network within the city, who host a cutthroat survival television show called The Running Man. The rules of the game show are simple. 3 contestants will have to survive out in the world for 30 days, all while professional hunters and the public at large try to track them down in the process. At first, such a task might seem daunting for Ben, who has to use his resourcefulness and drive to evade capture at key points throughout, but the motivation that keeps him going on is being reunited with his loved ones at the end. So, Ben participates and leads the game show on a national chase, entertaining the audiences via freebie television sets in the dystopian world and seeking to provide a better future for his daughter and wife in the process. Now, to start off this review, I want to make it clear up front that I'm a huge fan of everything that Glen Powell has done in his career consistently. And it's undeniable about the impact that he's had upon pop culture over the last few years alone. He might possibly be the closest thing we've ever had in this generation to a movie star in every true sense of the word. And it's been fun to see him branch out and try distinct and unique roles over his tenure so far. And it seems that his future is looking bright as he accepts these varying roles and continues going on to these films. Yet, with that said, when I was watching this particular film, part of me wondered aloud whether this was a specific role Powell should have passed on explicitly. And this is because Glen Powell feels wildly miscast here for a character that doesn't seem to fit his sensibilities as an actor. Yet this isn't because of Powell's lack of talent. as he still manages to make the most of what he's given here. Rather, it's because this is a poorly contrived and represented character who is thin to all extents. And it's clear that both Powell and the film in general don't exactly know what to do with this character. To say that Ben Richards as a character is vastly complex or nuanced throughout the runtime is an understatement. As although we get small glimpses into his psyche and mindset heading into such a drastic and dramatic situation, it almost feels like the film itself is never interested in properly exploring what he feels or why he wants to partake in this contest outside of the narrow superficial setup confines of providing for his daughter. In fact, it almost seems insane to say, but Powell is clearly outshone by two other cast members in the form of Josh Brolin as the over-the-top and egotistical leader of the network, Dan Killian, who rules the Running Man show with an iron fist and provides audiences an in-depth look into the intricacies of such a fabricated situation. And of course, how could I not love national treasure Coleman Domingo in a bit part as the host of the Running Man, Bobby Thompson. Coleman is clearly having the time of his life here, and it's undeniably one of those performances where you can just tell an actor who's just showed up on set and had an absolute blast with his part. In fact, if I was to describe the cast of the Running Man overall, I'd call it an ensemble where everyone is clearly playing their part with enough energy and charisma to carry the project across the finish line, and that's undeniable. I absolutely loved Lee Pace as the incredible shadowy masked villain Evan McCone, who is tracking down Ben at every turn with a high intensity and prevalence that you more than feel throughout the runtime of the film. You know, it's funny because in my Twilight Marathon video from like a few weeks ago when I watched all the movies in 24 hours, I made the comment in that video that I loved Lee Pace's work and want to see him in more stuff, and little did I know it at the time, but he's prominently featured in such a great part here. Katie O'Brien and Martin Hurley are great as Ben's fellow contestants in the Running Man competition, both playing distinct foils to Richards as a character and how confident one is, how nervous one is, and how Ben lies directly in the middle of the spectrum between them. Jamie Lawson is great as Sheila Richards, Ben's wife who was there to support him throughout this intense endeavor, and last but not least, how could I possibly forget William H. Macy as Molly, an underground arms dealer who helps Ben towards the start of the competition. No matter where you look, there's talent and charisma as far as the eye can see within the runtime of the Running Man. Yet, as you might be able to discern from the tone of my review at this point, the other shoe is quite literally about to drop. To properly describe how disappointing and lackluster the Running Man is as a full cinematic experience, I'll be breaking down the film into 3 distinct acts and detailing why these portions of the film did or didn't work in favor of the overall end product. As you might be able to discern, some acts here are vastly better than others, and the inconsistency between portions of the film is one of the many problems this movie has. Act 1 is devoted to setting up the stakes of Ben's world, in which we get a front row view into his family situation with a sick daughter and no medication to provide for her. However, as he begins to decide to partake in the Running Man competition, one of the major problems with this portion of the film is how fast the setup and exposition goes. Normally, this would not be something I complain about within most films, as there have clearly been some egregious examples of this in the past as well, but when the setup of your film carries an intense amount of emotional weight and nuance with it, you need to ensure that audiences more than feel and understand that before you progress the plot forward. And unfortunately, the pacing is so relentless and quick in this portion of the film that we only get a superficial examination of Ben signing up for this competition. This is a problem, as we never get a full examination into Ben's motivation into this decision. And the film never attempts to allow us to feel what Ben is feeling at that moment. Maybe the intent was to place us into Ben's viewpoint as he's kind of whisked along in the qualifying round with a feverish intensity, but part of me thinks this is clearly not the case of that and has more to do with pacing issues than anything else. As audiences move into the second act of the film, here is where the rampant action starts to show through within the runtime. This is clearly where Edgar Wright and all involved are having the most fun with the material. And this is also the point where Glen Powell kind of started to completely work inside of this role for me. As Ben and the hunters are hot on each other's trails of evasion and capture, the entire situation becomes a fascinating cat and mouse game of sorts where the tension and stakes remain high and prevalent for so much of this portion of the film. There are some fantastic set pieces within this act, especially an extended location usage of an apartment building that extends for quite some time and continues to build upon itself as the sequence progresses. There are so many rampant and exciting ideas bursting through here with ease. And on that level, Act 2 is the best part of this film by far, and is quite possibly worth the price of admission alone if you're kind of set on seeing this movie somehow. Yet it's also within this portion of the film where a distinct problem that had been gnawing on my mind for the entire film up to that point continued to shine through with vibrancy and urgency. And this problem is that this doesn't feel like an Edgar Wright film in the slightest. Rather, this feels like the least Edgar Wright an Edgar Wright film has ever been, which kind of has to be some sort of crazy paradox or something. As I was watching the action within this portion of the film, something felt distinctly off. but I didn't think anything of it presently as I watched the action play out on screen. But as I continued to view the action through this distinct lens, the issue became apparent. Wright's signature style was nowhere to be found here. Instead of the intense and vibrant comic book, graphic novel slant that we know and love from Edgar, with cool camera work and choreography that just feels slick and stylized in every sense of the word, one of the most disappointing things about The Running Man is how stock and superficial so much of the action here feels, especially when comparing this to the majority of the action genre nowadays. And on that level, although I hate to say it, so much of The Running Man feels dull and boring as a result. It's so disappointing that Edgar Wright, of all people, doesn't allow himself to fully shine through with directorial ease here. And I would love to know the intent and purpose behind this because it hurts the film so much as a result. And then we arrive at Act 3, the portion of the film that is supposed to be dedicated to wrapping up and contextualizing the film from an outsider viewpoint and perspective. For the entire runtime up to that point, I was personally wondering how the film was going to execute such a conclusion. After all, Stephen King's novels, as an avid reader, are chock full of narrative depth and complexity, and it makes sense that those important topics would be broached with an urgency. And in the case of The Running Man, it seems that there are indeed some incredibly timely themes relating to the core concept of social media craze and game shows, and how it all affects our collective subconsciousness as a society, with even a little bit of an AI/deepfake slant thrown in there for good measure. And while I ultimately think the film is admirable for trying to convey and explore these ideas through a deeply satirical and over-the-top lens, almost to allow viewers a front row seat into how ridiculous these circumstances are, I cannot say I walked away from The Running Man ultimately feeling that these ideas were explored in a meaningful way. As it stands, the film features deeply ham-fisted messaging that feels nuanced and complex in premise, but is baffling on paper. This is a film that is not being subtle in the slightest with what it tries to say, and audiences really feel that to an insane degree throughout its runtime. However, there's a difference between deep fascination and exploration into a theme, and beating the audience literally over the head with such an idea. And unfortunately, The Running Man falls into the latter. I was researching the differences between the novel and the film for this review, and I discovered that the ending of this film was changed from the book in such a ridiculous way to fit the action-heavy exterior that the film wants to tout around. This change not only ruins the dramatic and satirical commentary that the book managed to explore in a nuanced and capable way, but also cheapens the impact overall when these events do occur on screen, but are passed by almost instantly. Again, as with all my reviews, I won't get into specific spoilers here, but if you've watched the movie and read the book, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. And thus, as I'm analyzing the overall package of The Running Man in the end, you'll probably want to know as a prospective audience member whether this is a rousing cinematic action spectacle that is worth checking out on the big screen. And unfortunately, and I hate to admit this, I am not able to say as a critic that this is a film I would recommend to most people out there. However, this doesn't mean I'm not able to see the intent and merit that this film holds for some people. And on that level, even if I didn't love it, I'm kind of able to understand why other people would as well. This serves solely as a vehicle through which Glen Powell can run around in big budget action set pieces. And I understand that this is something that a lot of audiences want and crave from this movie. And on that level, I gotta say, the film works. But I also understand at the same time that there are audience members out there, like myself, who crave originality and individualism within the action genre, especially in a sea of crowded and formulaic content out there currently. And while I had hopes for a minute that Edgar Wright would be able to bring a fresh perspective into the genre, to say I left ultimately moved or astounded is an understatement. At its core, The Running Man is not a bad movie, but it's a disappointing one at that. What it holds in terms of charisma, it lacks in quality. And although the overall package might present itself as a vibrant and colorful experience full of fun characters and action intensity, if you look close enough, you might be able to see the small cracks in its exterior that hint at something seriously problematic with its structure underneath. That's why I'm giving The Running Man a 2 out of 5. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this review on my channel. If you're new around here and you like the content you see, don't forget to click that subscribe button down below, like the video, and turn on push notifications. Also, leave comment suggestions down below for future video, essay, and review topics. With that being said, until next time, this is Mitchell signing off. Peace out.